Hello and welcome to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. Rachael is a speaker, inspirational author, and an overcomer. As Rachael is walking through her own journey of grief, she's challenging others to persevere and overcome their own circumstances. Find out more at rachelflick.com. Here now is your host, Rachael Flick.
Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. I'm Rachael Flick here today with Steve Arterburn at the NRB, which is a Christian media convention here in Dallas, Texas. Steve Arterburn is the founder and chairman of New Life Ministries and host of the #1 nationally syndicated Christian counseling talk show, New Life Live, heard and watched by over 2 million people each week on nearly 200 radio stations. Steve is the founder of the Women of Faith conferences, attended by over 5 million people. He is a best-selling author of books such as Every Man's Battle, Healing is a Choice, The 7-Minute Marriage Solution, and his latest title, Take Your Life Back. With over 8 million books in print, he has been nominated for numerous writing awards and has won 3 gold medallions for writing excellence. Steve is a nationally and internationally known speaker and has been featured in national media venues such as Oprah, Inside Edition, Good Morning America, CNN Live, The New York Times, USA Today, ABC World News Tonight, among many others. He has degrees from Baylor University and the University of North Texas, as well as 2 honorary doctorate degrees. Steve resides with his family in Fishers, Indiana. Steve's latest book is 100 Days of Freedom from Fear and Anxiety. Steve, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on the Hopecast.
Now, after you read all that, do we have time to do an interview?
We're out.
Because
if you could just not be like so accoladed.
Yeah.
Like, geez,
I think it's the first time anybody's ever read that
the whole thing.
So
yeah, we want to make sure everybody knows how amazing you are before we start talking.
By the way, before I came here, I was talking to one of the greatest people ever born, Pat Boone, who was, in his day, was as popular as Frank Sinatra and all the rest.
Oh, yeah.
And he, Debbie Boone, You Light Up My Life, that's her dad. But anyway, it's so wonderful to see people that are still doing great things, and a lot of people around here are doing great things. By the way, did you know that NRB, I used to think it stood for not really believable, but people are so much more normal now than when I started.
He's got dad jokes, everybody. Yeah. He's got dad jokes.
I have a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old. So when you have those children, you have to have them. Yeah, but it's good to be with you.
It's great to have you. So I, in anticipation of this episode, was really excited because fear and anxiety is bread and butter, right? Yeah. So I serve at a Christian sports camp called Kanakuk Camps.
Yes, my friends who were wealthy went there, and I did not. And a friend of mine kissed my girlfriend there. So it's
Joe, are
emotional.
You listening to this?
It's emotional.
Joe, they're kissing. They're kissing in the woods. Yep. It's not allowed.
Yeah, that's right.
And so one of the things that I do for the students is just work with them when they have panic attacks at camp.
That's so
they
good.
have their natural coping strategies are not there with them. They're away from home. Lots of stimulation, long days, dehydrated, hot. It is a perfect opportunity to get stressed out, if they have any fear and anxiety going on.
Yeah.
And
I had panic attacks.
I have too. They're horrible.
I was so embarrassed. I had never experienced anything like it. And I lived in Texas, and the organization was moving me to California. And I'm just not giving it a second thought, but I'm moving out of state. California is strange.
That's
and
huge.
I just never stopped to deal with it. And so when all of a sudden I'm up in the upstairs of my apartment, and I think I'm going to die. I've never had anything like that. And so I crawled down the stairs out onto the front porch, and I just begged somebody to take me to the emergency room.
It does feel like that, doesn't it?
I died.
The
and
sweats,
this couple came
your
by.
Heart.
They put me in the back of their car, took me to the emergency room, and the doctor said, I think I know what this is. I'm going to give you an injection of Valium, and you're going to be fine. And I go, no, I'm dying. It'll shut my heart down.
Oh.
And 5 seconds later, I was a different
Feeling
person.
better.
And I was so embarrassed. But then, as many people, as you know, then there was the fear of that happening.
Right, that
again.
You can't anticipate it or control it.
Yeah, and there were a couple of times where it almost did happen again. But fortunately, I had a lot of support and folks around me, and when I moved out to California, and I made it. But I really know what that terror is like. It's horrible.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that you're helping them with that.
Well, I mean, I'd never had panic attacks before Micah died. My husband was killed. And
how was he killed?
He was murdered in the line of duty. He died.
I'm so sorry.
Taking a bullet to save his partner in an undercover auto theft investigation.
Wow.
Yes.
How long ago was that?
About 3.5 years.
My goodness. That's horrible.
Thank you so much for your condolences. I apologize that I forgot to prep you on that before our interview.
Did anybody ever tell you about what happens at about 5 years?
I don't know if I want to know. Do I want to know?
It gets better.
Okay, good.
And I've actually experienced that myself, but I'd heard people say that when there's a really big loss.
Yes.
You're never the same, but
right.
at about 5 years, something good happens. Now, even if it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
But it really did. I had a really, really severe tragedy that I had to get over, and 5 years, sure enough,
5
just
years.
like people tell me. So
I have heard it takes 3 to 5 years. So I've definitely started to feel more like myself.
Yeah.
In this last year, kind of things have a rhythm that they didn't before, when everything was just completely discombobulated in my life. So that's encouraging that I can look forward to more growth and more healing. Thank you for that.
It's just an example of how things just don't always work out well, even though you're in the faith. It doesn't make you immune. And I was reading about where Paul had his, road to Damascus experience. And Ananias was supposed to go to him. And one of the things that Jesus said was, we're going to tell him how he's going to suffer for me. It's just the strangest thing that here we're all excited. If they were back 2,000 years ago, he's not going to persecute Christians anymore. And let's get over there and let's tell him how he's going to suffer and be persecuted. But that really is the reality of the Christian faith, that you're
in this world we will have trouble.
Yes. Yeah. And it's so sad when people that don't know the Bible judge folks for having problems or an illness that doesn't get healed, and they think it's because of faith or secret sin or something like that.
And these are usually Christian people who don't know the scripture, right?
Totally.
You don't have enough faith, or you're not doing it right, or you're being judged.
One of my favorite stories is I met a man in Utah, and he told me that his wife was a Mormon. This was this would have been 16 years ago. His wife was a Mormon who accepted Christ and came out of the Mormon church. And he was an angry atheist, very committed to atheism. Didn't believe in God or anybody else. So he had something like 14 or so brain tumors, and he was in hospice, and he was dying of brain cancer.
Wow.
And they took him to do a final MRI they wanted to see what it looked like, how it was growing. An atheist. And it took the doctor forever to come out and shake his head and say, I don't know what happened, but you have no cancer.
Oh, my goodness.
As an atheist, a year later, he accepted Christ, and he's been serving the Lord ever since. But I love that story because, well, obviously, he didn't have faith. The faith didn't get him healed. It was God that did it because he had a plan for him. I just love that story, that he was not an example of somebody that achieved some level of faith and then God healed him. I'm sure that happens too. But it was really so wonderful to hear that God works with a lot of different people in different ways.
I recently lost a friend to cancer who was an incredible woman of faith and prayed and trusted the Lord up until the very end. She's 38, 5 children. It was a very young, quick loss.
Oh, that's tough.
And I think, I had a conversation with a hospice worker, and they said sometimes when we get so into the idea of a faith healing, and that, there are people who won't even speak about their illness, right? They won't even talk about it because that's a lack of faith. If we say, this was my prognosis, or having an end-of-life conversation, or, just kind of allowing for the both and, right?
Yes,
the
right.
dichotomy.
Yeah.
That would be a lack of faith. And the hospice worker said, if you can't even speak about it, if you can't even acknowledge the reality that God may choose to heal you in heaven, then it's really become all about your faith.
That's right.
And your power to heal yourself through your faith. And you're saying it's totally outside of our hands. It's the Lord.
Is. And I wrote this book, Healing is a Choice, and it's all about, even though we might not experience physical healing, there are certain things that are very healing choices, such as forgiveness. That's pretty obvious, and grief. And one of the things that is a very healing choice that relates to what we're going to talk about is the choice to risk. And a lot of times people who have been hurt, abandoned, this, they can become addicted to or dependent on safety, sameness, predictability, just keeping themselves safe. I don't think that's what God wants for us. I think He wants us certainly to heal and protect ourselves in our most vulnerable times. But there comes a time where we need to be willing to step out. And if we've gotten some good help, I think there's a good chance that we can step out again and not just be so obsessed with never being hurt again.
Let's talk a little bit about that help. What kind of help would people want to seek if they want to get out of a place where they're stuck, where they're fear, anxiety, struggling with panic attacks, and emotional pain? What are some of those handholds? In Colorado, we like to rock climb, right? So I just imagine like those grips screwed into the wall, and that being a piece of the core components of healing.
Everyone in my family rock climbs, so
awesome.
I relate to that. I'll have to show you a video of my daughter going upside down. Anyway,
that's impressive.
So, here's a book they could read, 100 Days of Freedom from Fear and Anxiety.
Okay, there's one of our handholds.
And it's a really, all I can say is my 94-year-old mother absolutely loves these books that we do at New Life. But the first thing I would say is that some people can do a lot of things because they have a lot of resources, and other people can do limited things. But I believe that God honors us, works with us individually.
Yeah.
And the person that can do a lot of things may not ever get as free or comfortable with fear and anxiety as the person who has a few things. So first thing I would say, let's just talk about a woman who is in a very horrible marriage, and she's afraid for her children and afraid for herself that one day he's going to walk out and never come back. Hopefully, she would go to a women's Bible study. That'd be the first thing. And hopefully it would be the kind of Bible study in a safe church where you can actually have problems and you can share problems. And at least that kind of support, the prayer that they do together, James 5:16, confess your sins to one another and pray for each other that you might be healed. That can happen in a Bible study. So I just want to say prayer and Bible study with community. In this case, women, that would be an amazing thing. And then let's take it up a notch, if there's a great pastoral counselor that can be trusted and knows what they're doing, and some don't. At New Life, we hear people say, my husband hit me and I was told, stay there, God will honor this, and she has children, and of course the first thing she needs to do is get herself safe.
Absolutely.
But anyway, there are a lot of people that are pastoral counselors that are better than licensed clinical therapists. So that's another thing that you can do. And then there also, if you are in a destructive relationship, a codependency group or a trauma recovery group could really be healing. And then, of course, we have Christian counselors all over the country. And so I love to see people get in with a really qualified person that knows counseling and knows the Bible also.
Yeah.
But I think you have to be patient with yourself. and realize that, there's this tender, you could call it a nervous system, nervous system.
Yeah.
And it has really been jolted. This
Yes.
wasn't what we expected when we were
Right.
6 years old. So we have to give it a chance to adjust to a new reality. But I think working with someone like you could make all the difference in the world. I have seen so many people shamed over codependency when what they really are they are experiencing post-traumatic stress syndrome or disorder because they live in so much realistic fear.
Yeah.
And
Will
then
you explain that link for me a little bit, codependence with PTSD?
Yeah. So if a woman doesn't know who's coming home, and now this applies to men too.
And you mean
because-
like which part of her husband is
Yeah.
going to be
Yeah.
seen tonight kind of thing?
Yes, thanks
Okay.
for clarifying that. Precision of language, as they say in one of our favorite movies. But if she doesn't know how he's going to be,
Yeah.
and as I said, there are guys, and I've been in this kind of relationship, you don't know who is coming through the door.
Yeah.
Sometimes amazing and sometimes horrific. But if she's living in that kind of terror because every third or fourth or fifth time he
Yeah.
is angry, drunk, throwing things, yelling at her and all of this kind of stuff, well, maybe she is there because she's paralyzed from the trauma.
Right.
And he knows that.
Yeah.
And so he continues to traumatize her. And it's not as simple as she wakes up one morning and says,
Yeah.
wow, I'm in an unhealthy relationship. I must be codependent. I think
gonna
I'll
pack
go.
up and leave.
Yeah. It's just not that
Yeah.
simple. In fact, I was talking to a lady the other day. My wife and I were having dinner with her and her husband. And in her first marriage, she was with a very destructive, very successful man, but at home, very destructive. And she said, I stayed with him 13 years, and I always just felt so much shame over that.
She felt shame for staying.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I said, well, I can see why you would, given all the messages that were there, but why did you stay 13 years? Because I wanted my kids to have a stable home, and it was stable, and I felt like if I ever caused a problem, that he would leave and never come back, and we'd be stranded. I said, so what happened at 13 years? She said, I finally confronted him. I said, well, what did he do? He left and never, ever came back. I said, so I think here you are feeling shame over a very courageous choice that you made. And I don't know
Yeah.
if there was a better choice or not. I mean, some people, if they leave, the person will find them and kill them. I mean,
Right.
so
Right.
it's
Domestic
so
violence,
easy for
yes.
us to make some kind of superficial judgment. But that woman, and here she is, she's now married to someone else, has a wonderful relationship, and she had shame still. And I didn't want her to have that. I wanted her to feel the honor that she really deserved because she did that for her children.
Yeah.
And they were never in danger or anything like that. But it was a horrible, horrible thing for her. Now,
So-
somebody hearing that, by the way, would say, oh, well, that's totally codependency. And and sometimes we kind of make people feel weak
Yeah.
over that term.
Absolutely.
It's just a little more complicated than
It
that.
is more complicated, and I think it's really important too to realize that a lot of people enable addicted behaviors, whether that's anger, right, or a
Right.
substance, out of self-preservation.
Yeah.
And for some it really is self-preservation because many women who try to get out of domestic violence situations, they die.
Yeah.
They-
Well, when you're my age, you've been through a few things and you learn some things.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember hearing that if a man was married to a borderline personality disorder, that here's the formula. Tell her you love her, you really appreciate her, and then tell her the thing that you want her to change. Well, that just sounds really good.
Doesn't it though?
But I was married to a borderline personality
Okay.
disorder, very extreme. And the only thing, one night I remember this, the only thing between her and the pavement was my arm keeping her in the car. And if I ever confronted her or challenged her, our daughter was the one that paid the price. So eventually she had an affair and left, and I raised our daughter, who's 30 and one of the most incredible people in the entire world. And people always ask me, how do you raise someone like that? And I tell them, you have to raise her, because kids aren't
because she's
robots.
amazing.
But the point of all this is that it's easy to feel shame or to feel like an outcast or I was weak, when in reality, if we could step back and not listen to other people, we might see ourselves and the things that we did from a very, very different perspective.
Okay. I appreciate you bringing the complexity of human relationships into this conversation. I think it's turning over, but we've absolutely had a resistance in the Christian culture to psychotherapy.
Oh, definitely. It's the psychologists that were Christians' fault. I'll tell you why. Because many people, years ago, I was around when a lot of this actually began. And many of the guys that were Christians and really wanted to be kind of a higher level pastoral counselor, or they just wanted to be a clinically trained PhD psychologist. Well, they used words that pastors weren't familiar with. And there are a lot of pastors that are really insecure. And so if you're using words that aren't in the Bible and I don't understand them, then you must be looking at something that can't be good.
Or you're
now,
threatening
that
me.
is exactly. It's an oversimplification, but I tell you, it is part of the problem that therapists should have had a little discussion at grad school and said, look, the pastors have the people that we want to help. So we ought to speak their language versus impress them with all these big words that they don't understand.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So you think some of it was just a reaction to insecurity and kind of feeling, because it used to be doctors, right? Those were our therapists, and you'd go and bare your soul and your skin, right?
Yeah.
And then it moved or continued in the church, and then it's been like, oh, well, counselors or therapists are more excellent healers, quote unquote, hanging finger air quotes here, guys, podcast listeners. And so you think a lot of that was just a reaction to feeling displaced.
Yeah, and I think it was natural that a person getting a PhD that was a Christian, and there was a psychologist and some psychiatrists, that they would feel so proud that they did that. But they needed to deal with the pride a little bit, and I think if they had, as my wife's term is, humbled down. If they had humbled down a bit, they would have made it comfortable for those pastors to be in their presence. And I've seen a greater acceptance in some churches, and I've seen just about the same kind of rejection in others. You know, when I started New Life, which was about 33 years ago, we did Christian psychiatric programs in secular psych hospitals. And for us to be allowed to do that,
that's a big deal.
We had to have a better program than anybody else because they were suspicious. But all of our people, we had Christian psychiatrists, we had Christian psychologists and therapists. And I was at a medical staff meeting one time where a Jewish psychiatrist stood up and said, I think it's a shame that the Christian unit, and I thought, oh no, what's he going to say? That the Christian unit is the best unit in this hospital. Why can't we bring our standards up to theirs? And I was in D.C. one time, and there was a lady looking at the door of a New Life treatment program, and I said, hey, what are you doing? She said, that's where people get well. But for us to be there, we couldn't go in carrying a Bible.
Yeah.
So it was just the opposite. We had to be the best. And we had 32 of those around the country. Now, you know, we have a network of therapists, and I hope that they're the best because a lot of times in the secular world, they're viewed as weak because they're Christians. And then in the Christian world, they could be viewed as heretics because they are
psychotherapy.
Right. But there is this thing within all of us. It's a soul. It's everything that the physical body isn't. We all know that. and it's designed to seek God. I really believe that's what your soul wants to be with God, and it just can't purely be with God because this is a fallen world. If we were in the garden, we'd still blow it like Adam and Eve did, but we are blocking or preventing, or the world has shut us off from God, and now Jesus is bringing us back to Him.
Yeah.
But if we don't do whatever it takes to heal what's inside of a person, we're really, here's what it says in Jeremiah 6:14. It says, they treat the mortal wounds of my people with superficial treatments. Now that was a few thousand years ago.
Band-Aids for bullet holes.
Yeah, that's right. And so we're still, it says from priests to prophets, they're doing that, and they're still doing that.
Yeah, in losing Micah, I have created a list of what not to say, right?
Yeah.
One of my favorites is, I know how you feel, my dog died. That's one of my top ones.
Right.
Or God has a purpose for everything. Heaven needed another angel.
Yeah.
I think we feel we're not really willing to wrestle with the complexities of God, of the world, of relationship, of the problem of pain, like C.S. Lewis talks about.
Right.
And we don't know what to do with it, and I need to make you better, right? You're a problem I need to fix, not a person in process.
And somehow I believe that I'm going to say something that's so amazing and profound that it's going to make a difference in your life. The spiritual gift of shutting up is something that Christians should rely on more.
I need that on a sign in my kitchen.
It's actually the gift of discernment.
Yeah.
Because if you have the gift of discernment, then
I like your way of saying it better, though.
You're going to discern that this is really, really a horrible thing to say. Marilyn Meberg was one of the speakers at Women of Faith, and her husband died of cancer. And a person said to her, now you can be married to Jesus.
Oh.
Yeah. So, since we're talking about this and somebody might be listening and thinking, oh, I've said these things to people.
Yeah.
You don't need to say anything.
Yeah.
You just need to be there.
Yeah, the presence is so powerful. Yeah. The power of empathy.
And what I like to say to folks who have had a loss is not, how are you doing? Because they're doing pretty horrible. I like to ask them, is this a good day or is this a bad day? Because in the beginning, they're all bad days, and then a couple of good ones come along, and then you start to shift. But to me, in my own life, that resonated with me much better than how are you doing?
Bad. I'm doing bad. I've had a tragedy.
What could I do for you? And I would say, well, you could probably run the clock up, and we can get on with our lives here. But right now, I've got to deal with a lot of pain.
Right. Yeah, I tell people that my favorite question is, how does your grief feel today?
Yeah. Oh, it's great. Yeah.
Recognizing, like I talk about the wheel of misfortune, and that intense tragedy and pain feels like every 30 minutes you spin the wheel, and instead of money, it's all negative emotions, and you get a new one every 30 minutes.
That's right.
And it's just constantly evolving, especially in the early intensity of it.
I relate to that wheel of misfortune. My daughter and I were on Wheel of Fortune, and we didn't win anything. And so we call it the Wheel of Misfortune. So anyway, yeah, I'm with you.
Were you really?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
I did get a little name badge, Steve.
You got to
there.
keep it.
It was so
fun.
fun.
Take pictures with Vanna White. And
we have a memory, but it wasn't a good memory. Anyway, thought I'd throw that in there.
Thank you. That's a really good story to affirm my analogy. I'm going to remember that. Yeah. I want to see the barriers and the stigma to getting help come down, that more people could get free without feeling like they need to fake it till they make it when it comes to faith and pain.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a little story about my daughter that might help folks remember to do something. She's amazing and very bright, and she has all the things I have. She has attention deficit disorder, dyslexia, all these things. Most creative. I mean, she makes movies with her friends and all this. So the other day, I said, Amelia, I'm going to give you some scenarios, and you act it out. So improvisation.
Okay.
12 years old. So one of them, I said, you are a biology teacher and you know nothing about biology, but you have to teach these kids. And
this sounds like a hoot.
She goes,
did you record this?
No.
Oh.
And she goes, okay. So she says, good morning, class. My name is Amelia Arterburn. And of course, this is biology class. Before we start, I'd like to know what you know about biology. Anyone want to start? And then they gave her a big word. She acted like they gave her a big word. And she said, I know how to spell that, but you tell me how you spell that word.
She's a smart cookie.
Oh, my goodness. But when you are in the presence of somebody who's grieving, you do not know anything about their grief. Every person's grief is different. So rather than act like a biology teacher or a grief teacher, oh, I know what it's like, I lost my dog or whatever.
Yeah.
Why don't you ask them?
Yeah.
What is this like for you?
Yeah.
Everybody's grief is different. When I had the worst loss of my life, I didn't realize that fear could be painful. I just thought fear was fear. But in my loss, I felt it like an ice pick in my heart. And
physically.
It was a couple of weeks later that I realized that wasn't anger, and it wasn't shame. It was fear of what my future would be, that my life would be over, all that kind of stuff. So I know that when we are afraid, it can be very, very painful.
Yeah,
and
it is.
It's humiliating when people say things like, well, God didn't give us a spirit of fear. And
well, then I must be doing it wrong.
I heard people say that when COVID started. Well, we don't need a mask because God didn't give us a spirit of fear. And I just would say, well, God didn't give us a spirit of stupidity either. And so we want to be sure we're making
wise
good
choices.
And, it's so much more complex than just somebody deciding that they're going to do something either courageous or stupid. They don't really understand that the brain, it's an organ, and for a lot of different reasons. Parts of it don't work very well. They don't line up, or there's a electrical failure or a chemical imbalance. And if you can't see that, then you'll never believe that people can't just make a decision and everything gets better.
Yeah. I know that for me, healing from the trauma of my husband's loss, I felt like I lost about 50 IQ points that week.
No, I'm sure.
I was putting my pants on backwards. I would, put in an earring and walk away. I couldn't eat. I would get lost in the middle of a city I'd lived in for so long. And
wow.
The trauma brain was just intense. And there were physical, organic changes to what happened in my brain. And the panic attacks, they were uncontrolled. Like I could feel them coming on, but I couldn't stop them.
Yeah, right.
And I just had to ride them like a wave, until they would dissipate in my body. And they do. They feel terrible, But
it will get better if people
absolutely
will connect with somebody, share with a safe person. On March the 10th, Dr. Dave Stoop died, and Dave and I were writing partners. We created the Life Recovery Bible together. 3 million of those Bibles are out there.
Wow.
And for 40 years, we were best friends, writing partners. We didn't know of any writing partners that still wrote together that long.
You still liked each other after all that time.
Yeah. And it was really hard to see him in the hospital and then rehabilitation, and then he had a stroke and couldn't recover. But these things are the realities of life, that maybe we could really believe that verse that says he comforts us so that we could comfort others.
Yeah.
And we should comfort each other, and we should visit people in prison, and we should help people that maybe you don't get much attention for helping. And that is a way to get out of your fear, is to go and reach out to somebody who's in a worse situation than you at the mission or Salvation Army or in a prison. I'm a teaching pastor of a church called Northview Church in Carmel. We have 4 campuses in prisons, Indiana state prisons.
Wow.
And
That's
it is
awesome.
such a joy to send them books, give them materials, but also to preach to them, because that's a very scary place for a lot of people. So fear isn't just for little wimpy people, it's for macho folks that are in situations they've never been in before.
Absolutely. I think that's really a high note for people to catch on to, is not that we hide our pain in service of others, but that we get outside of our own perspective by serving others.
Absolutely. You know, Dave, when he was 6, we wrote this, we have a new book out, and it's the last book we wrote together, and it's called The Soul of a Hero. And he was definitely a hero. But when he was 6, his father, very abusive man, gave him a red Schaefer mechanical pencil and said, Dave, don't lose this. Don't take it out of the house. He took it out of the house and lost it. And he told his mom that he wanted to tell his dad at the right time. But the mother went and told the father. And Dave said, that really began a divorce from my family. And I kept waiting for the people from Ireland to come and take me back to my real family, but they never, ever came. At 16, Dave went out and bought a red Schaefer mechanical pencil to give to his father, to say, I never forgot this, that I lost it, and I want to reconcile. His father didn't even acknowledge the gift. And that's when Dave said, the divorce was final from my family and from my father. And Dave lived with that father wound for a lot of years. And it was in his 40s before he began to do work on that father wound. But he was the kind of guy that wasn't afraid to do something he'd never done before. And we kind of had this little thing between each other, is that we're going to be okay. You know, you're going to be okay because you've always been okay. In the end, the things you worried about 5 years ago, they don't matter now.
Yeah.
And so when your husband died, you know, I wouldn't have said this to you. I might have, a year after, I might have said, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And obviously you are, and you're different than you ever would have.
And if we had trust and rapport in our relationship, I needed to hear that within a couple months, right?
Yeah.
Not the week of, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
But I needed someone that I trusted to come along me and say, this isn't forever.
Yeah. Somebody
and you're
that
going
knew
to
you.
heal.
Right.
Yeah.
And wouldn't give you false
Right, but
hope.
not a quick pat on the back.
No,
I
no.
saw you at church. You're going to be good. You're going to heal. That would have been painful. But
Yeah.
for a mentor or a dear friend, that would have been very healing.
Well, I think you know that probably the, pornography is an epidemic of the church, but also ungrieved losses
Oh,
are a
absolutely.
huge epidemic. And there's so many people, when I preach, I know their stories, and they have not fully said goodbye, have not fully grieved and gone through the pain and the struggle that they need to go through to grieve. And then they don't have to experience that pain anymore.
Yeah, I think that people feel like they're only allowed to grieve if it's a tragedy, right?
No.
It has to be like the most severe. And then even when, so I lost that friend, you know, and I've been like feeling grief that I know so familiarly.
Yeah.
That's a hard word to say today. It's so familiar to me. There it is. But I was talking myself out of it because I was like, well, you know, but this, or we weren't that close, or we could have been this, or it's been this. And I was like, what are you doing, Rachel? You're doing the thing you always tell people not to do.
Yeah.
Feelings don't have brains.
Yeah.
They are a barometer, you know. They're
Right.
not a measure of truth, but they tell you what's some of what's going on around you.
Well, you know, in the beginning, I wouldn't have said to you, it's going to be okay. But I might have said, after I got to know you, that whatever you're feeling or experiencing is okay. I might have said, don't monitor yourself. Don't try to do this well
Right.
or strong. Just do it. And I gave a devotion for the House of Representatives one time, and while I was still there was a congressman that died, and he was a wonderful, wonderful person, wonderful Christian. and the children were sitting on the front row. And the preacher got up to give the message, and he said, kids, another pastor might stand up here and say, your dad's in a better place, we should be happy for him, and all these things. But I want to tell you, I am very angry that he died. I miss him. I wish he was here. And if you're angry at God, he understands how bad.
That's so empathetic.
And it was so wonderful to hear somebody help them with the reality of, what does a 6-year-old care about Dad being in heaven and happy when he's not going to put me to bed tonight?
Yeah. Yeah, that's so real. That's so needed.
And it is interesting that in this world of Christianity that it's a phenomenon when we hear things that are real. But
isn't it?
Yeah. It's important to try to be that.
Yeah, I think that there's such a craving, especially in this upcoming generation, for authentic, vulnerable relationships, and just seeing it on social media that they're tired of fake booking or the Instagram life, where it's all cultivated and pretty and looks nice, because life isn't like that.
No, it's not. I was in seminary and I went to work in a psych hospital while I was studying counseling, and I really felt like, God was calling me to, the way I put it, to be a revealer of myself. And back in those days, most therapists were trained to never share anything about yourself. Now, you can overshare if you're a therapist.
It's very Freudian or Rogerian, right?
Yeah.
Like you're just the mirror to the client.
And so on the air and other places, I would talk about paying for an abortion and the other things that I had done. And I think by doing that, certainly for me, I felt free. No one could ever come up to me and say, "Hey, weren't you the guy that?"
Accuse you.
I wrote about it in this book, so I had no secrets.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important that other people maybe ask themselves, is God calling me to reveal the struggle that I've been through or still have? And might that be the thing that kind of unlocks my life? I go from trying to hide what I'm going through to be open and honest about it. And I just really believe that whatever secret that you're carrying, just the mere sharing of it, you probably take about 50% of the power out of it. We did a workshop and an 83-year-old woman came up to me and she said, "I'm going to tell you something that I've never told anybody, and I've lived with this shame all my life." And her big secret was that when she walked down the aisle, she was already pregnant. Never told anybody.
And she'd been carrying that secret all those years.
Now, I wanted to say, hey, listen, compared to what's going on out there, it's not that bad, but it is, but I just helped her to see that she was a hero.
Yeah.
That she could have had that taken care of.
Yeah.
And she didn't. She was a hero to her baby. And so we had a long chat. The next morning, she came back to the workshop. I think she lost about 10 years that night.
Just on her face?
Yeah. When the shame had been relieved
beautiful.
and her secret revealed. And
Isn't
then
it crazy
at
how
the
heavy
end,
it makes
she stood
people?
up and shared with everybody her secret.
That's going to make me cry.
Yeah. Never too late.
I love that. Yeah, secrets only have power in the dark. Once we start shining light and air on them, and shame is the one emotion that cannot be catharted. The only way we dissipate shame is by sharing it with others, who then give us a loving acceptance in return.
Yeah.
And that's how we alleviate it. And there are so many people. I know after my abortion, I just felt like I carried the scarlet letter, that I was incapacitated by that was the unforgivable sin. And I hated myself.
How old were you?
18.
18.
Mm-hmm.
And who did you go to, or how did you? I'm just curious.
I lived in Wichita, Kansas, and there was a famous abortionist there named George Tiller.
Oh, wow.
And because he was famous for performing third trimester abortion, so there's not many in the United States and the world. And I was a Christian. I was an 8 days a week church kid, right? And it went against everything that I believed, but because of my fear of judgment and loss of relationship with people that I loved and respected, I felt like it was my only choice, that my life was over. The enemy told me that your life is over. There's no education, there's no future, there's no happy life or family.
What about the guy? What was his response to all of that?
There were two responses to that. One was, I could see how this is a problem that we should take care of. And the other, which is why, because we were engaged and I broke the engagement off after a 3-year relationship, was he said, well, it would give me access to your life for at least 18 years. Wow. It was kind of a scary control response.
No kidding.
Yeah. And so that was pretty terrifying too, where I was like,
Well, people do things in desperate times that we regret, and I certainly regret mine. And of course, then I got married, and we were infertile for 7 years, and so the Christians came along and said, do you think that God is punishing you for that abortion? And no, because God says that He'll wipe your slate clean. And in 1990, we adopted after 7 years of we adopted Madeline from a couple who didn't have an abortion. And the nurse put her in my arms. And it was God giving back to me the very thing I had destroyed. And that's the God that we have. He is a God of, the Bible says He is rich in mercy.
Yes.
It's one of my favorite verses.
Yes.
He is rich in mercy, and He has that for everybody. Even if you're afraid.
When I got pregnant with the twins after my husband and I had been married later, I remember that pregnancy test being positive, and I just started crying. And before I told my husband or anyone else, I just took a walk with God, and I cried, and I said, you're not mad at me. You're not mad at me.
Right.
Because I thought that I had lost my one chance, and that I'd struck out, right, with the scarlet letter. Yep. And, maybe he could forgive me superficially, right? Like maybe he could say that he forgave me, but really, did he really trust me?
Well, My wife and I are working on this Bible. She developed the 1-year Bible for women, and I did the 1-year Bible for men. And in February, I opened up in the Old Testament passage, and Aaron, God's chief priest, first chief priest, was worshiping a golden calf. And then the New Testament passage that day, Peter was denying he ever met Jesus.
Yeah.
Now that's pretty serious stuff.
Right.
And did he take it away from them? No. He restored them, and Aaron remained the chief priest. Peter became the rock of the church. I just love that story because that's what God wants for us. Restoration, not us feeling shame. He went to a lot of trouble for us not to feel shame.
If you're listening today and you have places in your life of shame and that you're holding unforgiveness for yourself or feeling like God is holding unforgiveness for you, know that He has wiped your slate and that you can receive that, and that you do not have to carry any scarlet letters, whether that's divorce or abortion or infidelity or a number of things that we kind of hold as like the chief sins in the Christian church, whatever those may be. The Lord has seen that. He's died for that, and He longs to have relationship with you, and He wants for you to allow Him to give you His forgiveness and you to receive it. Everybody, this has been an incredible interview with Steve Arterburn, and I feel like we talked about that we were going to talk about your brand new book about fear, but I think we talked about all of your books.
Maybe.
Where can they find you if they would like to connect with more of your content?
Well, we're on YouTube, New Life Live, and then we're on Sirius XM Satellite Radio Channel 131 at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and newlife.com and 1-800-NEW-LIFE are the places to find us and the books and everything.
That's great. There's so much amazing content. I've loved getting to meet someone who I've read your work so many times, and as a counselor, and just brought a lot of growth and ministry of God in my life. Thank you so much. Everybody, this has been the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. You can connect with me at rachelflick.com. You can like and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, rate and review. And you can send me any of your questions at contact@rachelflick.com.
You've been listening to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. To find out more, go to rachelflick.com. While you're there, you can book Rachael for your next speaking engagement. Her inspiring message will be sure to engage and touch the heart of your audience at your next conference, church event, or business function. Go to rachelflick.com to book her today. While you're online, you can discover more information about all of the platforms that this podcast is on. Also, be sure to click on the social media icons at the top of the page, and you will be directed to Rachael's social media sites. If you listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate if you would subscribe and leave us a review. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time for another edition of the Hopecast with Rachael Flick.